Oh, here it's live streamed. Okay.
I think we're good. Yeah, we're good to start. Yeah.
All right. Everything's working. I will call the meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Mayor Canos,
Here.
Mr. Ambelang,
Here.
Ms. Greenfield,
Here.
Ms. McCready is absent. Mr. McQueen.
Here.
Mr. Romero.
Here.
Ms. Zamara.
Here.
Notice of this meeting was provided to the Bernardsville News and Courier News, filed with the municipal clerk and posted on the municipal bulletin board on August 15th, 2023, and revised August 22nd, 2023, and August 24th, 2023, to add additional items. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. Let me just get this up. So my welcome to the August 28th, 2023 special meeting of the Bernardsville Borough Council. This meeting is being conducted on Zoom and is being broadcast live on YouTube. Members of the public attending remotely on Zoom will be given the opportunity to comment at the appropriate time during the meeting in accordance with the following guidelines. Members of the public will be allowed to speak during the open session on the agenda. Comments will be limited to 3 minutes per speaker, which will be monitored and enforced by the borough clerk. Comments containing offensive, profane, or indecent language, or language constituting hate speech will not be permitted. Remote participants will be muted unless they are unmuted by the clerk, and remote participants will not be able to unmute themselves. The clerk will mute remote speakers at the expiration of their 3 minutes of allotted time, or if they make any inappropriate or offensive comments. All speakers shall state their names and addresses before making their comments. Speakers on Zoom shall activate their cameras so that they can be seen by members of the governing body and other members of the audience. All right. So, and now we have an open session. Please keep in mind that this is not a Q&A. It's an opportunity for comments. If there's something you'd like to discuss more in depth, either our borough administrator or myself would be happy to meet with you at a convenient time or date. So I see a lot of hands go up. Let me start with Christy McDonald.
Hello, and thank you very much, Mayor Canos and council and attendees tonight at the meeting. I'm here to make some comments on environmental impacts of the cyclocross development at 267 Minebrook Road. I'm Christy McDonald. I'm actually a resident of Bernardsville, 59 Anderson Hill Road, and I'm also an advisor to the Environmental Commission. So I am providing an overview of what I observed on my visit this morning, and comments on environmental impacts based on my expertise as a PhD level ecologist specializing in biodiversity conservation, watershed protection, and land stewardship. I'm also providing some suggestions for environmental best management practices that should be employed to remedy the damage as well as avert damage to the slopes and streams for similar projects in the future. So here are some of my observations and comments. I observed 4 or 5 areas that had been mowed or sprayed with herbicides to open up access for cyclocross trails so that participants could move through heavily vegetated areas along the lawn and into the forests adjacent to the open lawn. At a couple of the access areas, work on completing the access was abandoned, and at other locations, the access was completed. In 3 or 4 areas, steep slopes in the forest along the ravine above the stream have been completely cleared of vegetation. I estimate the ravine slope to be about 45% in some places, which is very steep. Vegetation rooted into steep slopes stabilizes soil and prevents soil erosion from occurring with storm runoff. Cycling activities on the slopes will further destabilize the soil and result in erosion downslope and into the stream. This will not only degrade the existing trails, but will result in decreased water quality in the Mine Brook due to sediment runoff. Best management practices for trails on steep slopes includes options such as avoiding the building of trails there in the first place, which is the more environmentally sound choice, or if it must be built, incorporate design elements on the trail, including switchbacks and climbing turns. Given that there is a stream at the base of the slope, the group should seek advice from an environmental engineer on designing a trail that will not damage the slopes or the stream. There needs to be something put in place to stabilize the slopes that have been damaged, such as native trees and shrubs, and no trees or other vegetation should be removed until a plan is in place. There was also a large area where debris, including pipes, plant pots, and other discarded items had been dumped into the riparian stream buffer when one of the slopes was cleared, presumably as part of the cyclocross development.
Christy, you're running out of time.
Okay. There's a 50-foot buffer. We need to uphold that. And I am open to helping and joining you to try to make a plan that will mitigate these issues, because I think it has a lot of environmental value. Thank you very much.
Yes, thanks for your professional opinions there. We always value them. And I think the council is well aware of what's been happening at 267. And I believe that's we're going to be discussing it. Where's Nancy? I don't see Nancy. Is Nancy here? I don't know if it's in Jack, is that in executive or public? Where's Jack? Okay, there's a lot of people here. Okay, let's move on.
It's on the agenda in under items of business about cyclocross. Yeah.
Okay, good. I knew it was on the agenda somewhere, so thank you. Johanna?
Yeah, good evening, everyone. It's hard to follow. Christy, she did a really
name and address.
I'm sorry, Johanna Wissinger, Washington Corner Road Environmental Commissioner. I see there are a lot of people here, and they're here probably for a very important topic. My topic I thought was important too. I was also concerned about the cyclocross. I've been there. I'm not going to repeat all the things that or underscore all the things that Christy McDonald just said. I just have some questions about it. I will send my notes to Anthony just to economize on time. I'd like to know who's going to be overseeing this cyclocross and the use of our open space land. I'd like to know, most importantly, what's the future plans? For example, are they going to desire to widen that trail to 3 meters as the UCAI suggests? If the number increases, as the popularity of this extreme sport increases, how will this be accommodated, controlled? Will they desire new slope challenges, more bunny hops, like sand and mud pits? I've read a little bit about them. I looked it up. I didn't know about them. I'm not on the recreation or the trails committee. So these are all really legitimate questions. I have a lot more of them. I'm not going to take the time because I see that there are a lot of people that want to discuss the Palmer project. I'd be happy to be in the discussion. I really endorse the suggestions that Christy made. I think we really have to think about the consequences of this for the future, especially can this possibly be restored in time for spring hikers, how long they're going to be on the trail. And so I'll cut off now and hope that you will seriously think about this. This is a very serious topic, and I think it deserves some good decisions made. Thank you.
Thank you, Johanna. Pat, Rye?
Good evening. I decided to come into the meeting tonight to not only watch what's going on, but talk about a change in an ordinance that I suggested to you, Mayor Knose, regarding
It's
political
actually on
signs.
the agenda. It's on the agenda tonight.
So I just wanted to make the rest of the council aware of my thinking on this one.
Okay,
The old ordinance dealt with a fixed date of election day, which this year is November the 7th. And it did not account for the fact of two changes to election law in the state of New Jersey. One being the fact that early voting will commence on October 28th and end on November 5th. And that runs from Saturday to Sunday, a 12-day period. And that's actual voting as far as I'm concerned. So to say that we have to use November 7th, which is it for this year, as a fixed point for political signage in to be sort of old-fashioned in light of the fact that the current law in the town talks about the election day as being fixed. If we were to even go to when ballots are going to start showing up in Bernardsville for early voting, that would mean that we'd be talking around September 24th, which would mean that signs could go up early in August. All I'm asking for is that we amend it to use the commencement of early voting as the fixed point and track back 60 days from then. So currently the law says September 8th. If we backtrack, it would say that right now, around the 29th, is when political signage can go up. I know in advance that that's not a lot of people's favorite thing, but I humbly ask for you to commit to consider amending the ordinance. Thank you so very much.
Pat, did you give your address? Just,
Oh, I'm sorry, 66 Anderson Hill Road.
thank you. Yeah, I think it only makes a difference of about a week, right? Yeah. Okay, thank you. Christina Ballas. Oh, she's still muted. Can you unmute her? Where'd she go?
Okay, hi.
Ah, there you are.
I'm Alex, 15 Old Fort Road. Nice to see everybody. It's been a minute. I wanted to start off actually complimenting the town and the recreational department. My kids, I have two small kids, 6 and 9. They go to school in the district, and I heavily utilized recreational department camp this summer. And it was beyond wonderful. They had a great mix of kind of traditional camp as well as some add-ons that we took full advantage of. It had a mix of STEM or just activity, physical activity, brain activities, yoga, et cetera, art. And it was just very well-rounded. And I just wanted to compliment the town and the rec department, both Bob and Leah, for their direction, to hope that it continues in that direction. It was really exciting for my kids, and it was a great value. And it's a big reason why I still love this town. The rec department is great. I also just want to say that the way the rec department works with small businesses, like when they have the small business Saturday, when we can send the kids kind of to play so that I can shop in town, all of those things are really a holistic view that I know my peers in other towns do not have. And so I think it's a big compliment on the department to really think through and kind of pull up and think bigger picture on what could help parents invest their time in the town, as well as have a successful, for me, work from home situation and utilizing the town's resources. So I'm thrilled with this summer's rec offerings. Of course, I'd like it to go through August, but I know we don't have college kids to help all the way through the end of the summer.
Yeah.
So there's private camps to help, but by far the rec department's my kids' favorite. So I wanted to say that. I am concerned, speaking of rec and playing in the, the resources that we have in town, the herbicide usage is something that is very concerning to me, having small children. We, of course, choose not, I guess not of course, but we choose not to spray any such things on our property because we know that it's carcinogenic for children. And so in that same vein, I wanted to express extreme concern about allowing rogue actors potentially to kind of contaminate our soil and to possibly endanger the community truly. I understand it's like small scale compared to maybe what some people think of, but long-term, those effects are pretty grave. I was shocking to think that somebody could randomly just do whatever they want with our public space. And so I hope that there are repercussions. I would never advocate to knock businesses down that obviously help maintain the integrity of our community and community involvement. And it's wonderful to have a service like cyclocross. It's not my vibe, but I know that it's helpful and lovely for lots of people. So I wouldn't want anything to be too punitive, but at the same time, there should be clear understanding that if you act rogue and do something on our town's property, that you will be held accountable, or someone should be held accountable, because what would stop somebody then from destroying possibly the polo fields or doing something on the new turf we put in the high school? You know, it just sets a bad precedent. So I just am wanting to voice support as well to make sure that that's taken very seriously. So
Thank you. And just for, if you don't see Anthony Soriano, he has a little timer in his box, so you can watch that to see where you are with the 3 minutes. Let's do the frost. Let's wait till, can you unmute them? There you go.
Okay, good evening. My name is Jack Frost. I'm here with my wife, Bonnie. We've lived in town here for 45 years. We love Bernardsville. Bonnie served as president of the board of Ed for a number of years. And our daughter, Karen Frost Olmsted, just recently completed the mural on the Mount Airy Road Bridge. We're invested in this town, and we're very concerned about this Palmer project. And we just, I mean, the drawing that was in the paper, recent paper, just, it overpowers the whole town. And that's just not Bernardsville. That's not what we're looking for. And I'll let Bonnie have her say here.
I guess our question is, Mayor, if in fact the only drawing that's proposed for consideration, at least in the public, is the drawing that we saw in the Bernardsville News, I question on what basis the proposal may or may not be accepted based on that drawing, because our understanding is that that drawing did not represent a new drawing of the new project. So maybe the council could be more clear to the residents of the town as on what basis would this proposal for this tract be accepted or rejected.
That was not the drawing that was in just yesterday or Thursday's paper, was not accurate. That's an old drawing from way back when. Whatever the plan is, what the council did is we wrote the redevelopment plan. The developer is charged with making his design fit within the zoning that's in that plan. And that now has to go to the planning board, and they are going to also review it. So there's, you know, it's not done here. There may be more variations and changes, and but it still has to stay within the parameters of the redevelopment plan. That was, I'm not sure where that drawing came from, but it shows nothing, doesn't show elevation. It doesn't, it's just like a flat kind of picture, but thank you for bringing that up.
Well, and I thank you for explaining that, because maybe other people didn't understand that either. So
Yeah.
thank you.
Okay, good to see you. Let's go with John Donahue.
Hi, I'm John Donahue. I'm the lead volunteer with cyclocross, and I'm a little disappointed that it's getting the response it is this year, because you know it's only been going on 3 years now. We went to the council, we got it approved. We walked it with the former administrator. We walked it with the chief. Borough and grounds people helped us do some of the trails. we do a little bit of trail work every time. You don't like the herbicide, sorry, we won't do it again, but there were some volunteers out there, and it's really hard to get volunteers. Most of us think to stick around because we're all busy. We won't do it again, but I look forward to cyclocross getting improved, and it just really galls me that people, self-professed environmentalists, are complaining about bicycles 5 times of the entire year on their property. We purchased that property for active recreation, and I'd like to see it used more for active recreation. That takes some sweat equity and elbow grease to make that happen. Just so I just don't know why it's getting this response right now, because it's nothing. There's no surprises here. Nothing's new. It's in the paper, for Christ's sake. We like to carry on because it is a popular volunteer-driven thing. So without the volunteers, it doesn't happen. So please let us do this. It'll be run the same way it's always been run for the 4th time in the last 3 years. I just appreciate your support. Thanks.
Harvey Goldberg. Harvey's here.
Yeah.
There you
Oh,
are.
Harvey.
Oh, no, mute us. Mute us. We're not mute.
Hear me? Am I unmuted?
Yes, you're good, Harvey. They just give us your name and address.
Harvey Goldberg. We've owned the Bernardsville Cinema for the last 45 years. I'm the president of the Old Cut Square Condominium Association, which has 8 members, including all the property that faces the square on the Brook side of the street. Calling about the Palmer property. I too was, I watched the whole program and saw the article in the paper. I'm very concerned about the impact of that building that faces Morristown Road. It's 4 stories. It towers above everything else. I'm in complete agreement that that building alone should be scaled down. I don't know about the ones behind it because maybe they won't be close enough to the road to have an impact like the one on the downtown facing the others. It towers over the Palmer building. I completely agree with that. What I don't understand is how come they got approval for a 4-story building in that redevelopment where the Quimby Village property redevelopment project only has a limit of 3 stories in height. And that whole property with the Quimby Village redevelopment slopes down from the square. So a 3-story building, you can hardly see that it's 3 stories from the square, from Old Cut Square. So it doesn't fit. I mean, it doesn't fit. I don't understand why that was allowed or approved. And I would like to see it scaled back because it just doesn't fit with the tone of the town. I mean, I love the project, don't get me wrong. I love the redevelopment project, but it's too massive for the town, the rest of the town. I mean, I think the borough needs to decide if redevelopment projects will have a height of 3 stories or 4 stories. And if it is 4 stories, then the redevelopment project in Quimby Village should be scaled up to 4 stories to make everybody even. That's my opinion. Thanks. I'm done. Unmute me.
Mayor, you're muted.
I'm sorry. Okay, I'm back. Thank you, Harvey. So let's do Carrie Hazelton next.
Hi, everybody. Carrie Hazelton, 397 Minebrook Road. First off, let me state that I am a cyclist. I ride close to 4,000 miles a year and have just returned from 2 cycling trips, one of which was mountain biking. I've tried out the cyclocross course, watched the races, and I have personally cleared overhanging barberry from the entire length of their trail as recently as June 21st. But I was stunned on August 16th to see the recent and widespread herbicide application and clearing of steep slopes then underway at the park. The new trails created intersect with the approved trail at right angles, they are an attractive nuisance, tempting for kids to cycle off and collide with other park users or each other. The borough has an ordinance establishing rules for park use. Rules are posted on the website. They apply to anyone using our parks and trails, whether groups or individuals. One of those rules is removal, destruction, or disturbance of plants, wildlife, and/or soils is prohibited. Okay, that rule has been broken, the damage done. So the question is, what do we do now? The rec director has been in contact with the cyclocross leadership. I expect to be involved in those talks going forward. Of course, rec and trails need more time to work with this group to ensure we are all on the same page. Several members of the Trails Subcommittee have offered to help in this effort. I look forward to doing what we can to ensure this doesn't happen again at this park or any other. But if we permit groups or individuals to break the rules, just say sorry, and then benefit from their transgression, we will lose control of our parkland. We can see this at Moraine Crest. We cannot allow 267 Minebrook to follow suit. Therefore, as an informed private citizen, I ask that the council immediately prohibit cycling and mountain biking use of the two areas they recently cleared on the hill. Erect snow fence, wooden snow fence to keep all users off those slopes. This fence should be supplemented with silt fence as necessary. In addition, initiate a cleanup supervised by Public Works of the debris that was thrown down slope. This slope also requires a snow fence for safety. Next, consult with knowledgeable borough personnel to stabilize the upper slopes to last through the winter, perhaps leaf litter and mesh to hold that in place. Approve and initiate replanting and restoration of slopes with native plants. These plantings should be planned and undertaken by borough personnel and members of the Trail Subcommittee with approval of Rec, Public Works, and in consultation with the environmental committee. These actions will help ensure the safety of all park users and get us a jump start in restoring this beautiful 22-acre park. With these restrictions in place, safety measures taken, and plans in process for the remediation of the damage, I wish the cyclocross riders a great season.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Rosalie.
Hi,
Hi, Rosalie. Name and address, please.
Rosalie Ballantyne, Pheasant Hill Drive. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. Somehow I don't think I'm appearing correctly, but I've messed something up on my computer. But anyway, I'm good evening, everybody, and I'm just here to talk about Palmer Square. I'm 100% behind downtown revitalization and have been forever, many years ago. And I really understand it's urgent. We need to do it, and we need to do it soon. With all due respect, however, but as I've said, I strongly feel that this meeting, that the purpose of tonight's meeting is premature and inappropriate. We need to first see the actual current elevation plans, drawings of the proposed project. To date, I haven't seen any. So before the council grants Advanced Reality the official redeveloper status, which I understand is the purpose of tonight's meeting, I'm wondering, is it actually legal to certify on the basis of unseen plans we haven't seen, just based on assumption, based on previous plans? I just think it's very wrong. It's just too important and major happening in our town. It's like the King Shopping Center many, many years ago. And I wish we had been more involved on that, but that's done. We have to get this right first before we get into it. So, like Harvey Goldberg said, last of all, to me, the first big issue, besides not certifying, giving the redeveloper seal tonight, the next big issue is scale. It's scale. The scale of the whole project needs to be reduced, and then we can deal and discuss and get on with details. And that's all I have to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Rosalie. Aaron,
Thank you. Aaron Duff, 51 Crestview Drive in Bernardsville. I'd also like to comment on the Palmer redeveloper designation. Every property owner in the state of New Jersey has the right to develop property using the contractor of his or her choice, provided that its development plan complies with underlying zoning for the property, or the owner can demonstrate that to the local land use board that it meets criteria for variance relief. This is not the circumstance before the council tonight. In January 2022, the Palmers and their chosen redeveloper, Advanced Realty, presented a proposal to develop this lot with a massive 4-story apartment complex, a proposal that did not even remotely comply with the zoning restrictions in the downtown district where the property is located. Rather than follow the legal procedures for obtaining a variance, it was essentially not going to get. The Palmers in Advance instead decided to approach the council for a designation of the property as an area in need of redevelopment under the Local Redevelopment and Housing Law, or LRHL, a law that was intended to incentivize the development of blighted properties in New Jersey. This council obliged over the dissent of Councilwoman Greenfield, overruling the planning board in the process and opening the door to overdevelopment of this lot in ways that vastly exceed the generally applicable downtown zoning rules. When it did so, it injected the government into this redevelopment of a purely private property, and by so doing, undertook a fiduciary obligation to its citizens to ensure that the immense powers that it was exercising under the LRHL would be utilized in the best interest of the Bernardsville community and not for any individual's private financial gain. The LRHL itself provides a mechanism for ensuring that this duty is fulfilled by empowering the municipality to choose from any number of potential redevelopers. The developer whose plan for the property provides the greatest benefit to the community and its people. Thus far, the council has chosen to consider only the development plan submitted by Advance, the Palmer's chosen redeveloper. As we saw in its architect's presentation on August 10th, this plan involves construction of a 55-foot tall, 4-story apartment tower over 3 sides of the 1-acre lot, 0 public green space, and destruction of borough heritage sites. This is not a plan that serves the interests or needs of the Bernardsville community. The question the council will answer tonight is whether it's going to push through the designation of Advance as this property's redeveloper, ensuring that the only interest served through the government's heavy-handed intervention is the Palmers and their developers, or whether the council will open the process to other bidders, leveraging the power of free market, open and fair competition to ensure that when government power is wielded, it is done so for the benefit of the people it represents. I'm looking forward to seeing where my elected officials stand on this crucial choice for the future of our borough. Thank you.
thank you, Aaron. Anyone else wish to be heard? Oh, Christina, is your hand still up, or did you want to speak again? Yes, you want to speak again? Okay.
Yes, sorry, I had to get unmuted. I'd like to say thank you to, Christina Ballas, 15 Old Port Road. Thanks, Aaron, for that recap, because I know you're wildly smart and did a lot of research, so I didn't know some of those intricacies. But I did want to say, I think that we did go out to bid, because I remember the meeting where we had lots of different, or a few, I should say not lots, a few different redevelopment opportunities. And then I think they went in one direction. I would not advocate to make irresponsible or quick decisions, haste and not well thought out. Although, just coming from a commercial real estate background, I'm not a broker. I work in the back end and operations, but it would be really hard to have a developer that couldn't then make sure that there was a good return on their investment, and more residential space, I'm sure, would help that. I would advocate that the council take these things very seriously and make sure that it goes for a vote. And I just would push towards continuing progress and really thinking things through. I appreciate the feedback we've had. I hope it gets taken into account, but To have it just be empty and keep stalling would, it seems like it's taking so long already from years ago when we started seeing them. So I'm not advocating to rush through for sure, but I just know that that at some point the developer needs to make sure that they can make a good return, and that's why they would put their energy into fixing something. They wouldn't do it just for the good of the community either. That said, of course, I want things developed in a responsible way that keeps to the integrity and charm of the town, of course. So, but I hope that the council keeps that in mind as they keep it going. So thank you.
Thank you, Christina. Aaron, I hope we're not getting into a debate here. Did you want to say something else?
I mean, I appreciate the chance to respond. If people are going to be able to speak twice, then I appreciate just whatever considerations given to others. Again, Aaron Duff, 51 Crestview. I completely understand Christina's point. However, it's when you only have one redeveloper who's even considered, does the council have any idea? Does anyone have any idea what return on investment Advance plans on making on this 68 unit apartment complex on the corner there? How do we know if we don't open it up to other developers who might come in and use competition to bring down the scale and intensity of that development? Say, you know what, I would be willing to do that development for 35 units and public green space and wider sidewalks and public amenities that are not presented by Advance's plan, and I'll still make 15% return on investment. We don't know that Advance isn't making 50%, 40%, 35%. We don't know because there's no competition. That's what markets do. Markets with competition will provide the optimal use of resources. And so here, if you have other developers who are willing to come in and do it in ways that still provide them return on investment, or else we wouldn't get any other bids. If there's no other way to do it, or we won't get any better bids. But if there are other developers out there who are willing to do it, still make a fair return on their investment and do it in a way that benefits the borough, benefits the people of this borough, and not the bottom lines of the property owners and their chosen developer, then we should consider that. And that's what the purpose of the meeting is tonight, is to decide whether we're just going to push through the property owner's developer, or if we're going to utilize free market systems to provide competition in a way that would benefit the borough. Thank you.
Thank you, Aaron. Let me just explain a little something here for those of you who may be new to this process. The borough does not own the Palmer property. The Palmers own it. And this is what happened with the Quimby project, why it's not going anywhere, is people didn't want to sell their property. So if the borough goes out and bids and gets 4 people who put in bids and the Palmers won't sell to them, nothing will happen. There's, people own things. They have the right to do with them as they wish. They have done their due diligence. They interviewed a number of developers and selected Advance to sell their property to because they would keep the building, the Palmer building. So that was their decision. We can't try and have someone else buy the property if the Palmers won't sell it to them.
Yep. And Mary Jane, can I just add to that? Because I know Harvey's on and he's heard us say this. For this council, and I'll speak for myself, condemnation is not something that I'm willing to consider. I don't believe it's the right of government to take people's property.
Mhm.
So with that being off the table, for me, it requires negotiation with the owners of those properties to make this work as best as possible. Now, there's a lot of public benefit we will get if we move forward with the Palmer properties. But I think the condemnation issue is a critical one to bring back up.
Yeah, thank you, Chad. Yeah, I think there's also, people are asking for more detail. That's what happens at the planning board. That's not happening with the council. The planning board is going to kind of hold their feet to the fire as to what this all looks like, what the elevation is, and the engineers, they're going to have all their professionals at the planning board to work through this. So just so you kind of know what the next steps are. What we are doing is, we've been working on this quite a while, is an agreement with Advance. And it's been a long time being negotiated. This was not a quick push it through kind of thing. We've spent a lot of time on this document. And actually, I would like, where are they? Matt Jessup, who is our redevelopment attorney, to kind of explain where we are with the agreement and just a summary of the changes we've made. I don't see Matt. He's here somewhere.
Mayor, I'm here.
There you are.
Hear me?
Yes.
Hello,
Before we
everybody.
actually start voting on anything. Yeah.
Sure. So I guess just a quick deferral to Jack. Are we done with the public hearing, Jack? Or is this the right time to proceed, or?
Sorry,
That's
my
up to- that's up to the
apologies.
Mayor, you can certainly speak. during the
Yes.
public portion.
I'm sorry. I see Pat Rye put her hand up again. Did you want to say something else just before we close the
Yes,
public hearing?
thank you for allowing me to speak a second time. Pat Rye, Anderson Hill Road, or as we lovingly call it, Anderson Hill Speedway. Approximately 2 weeks ago or a week and a half ago, there was another accident at the corner of Seney and Anderson Hill. Apparently, a lot of people are not aware of the fact that the change to 25 miles an hour happens at the top of Anderson Hill and not down the bottom. Look, we knew that we lived on a busy road when we bought this house 20 years ago. That's not what I'm complaining about. When we first moved here, and I bet a whole bunch of people don't know this, there wasn't a single crosswalk between Alcott Square and Seney. Now, over the years, a lot of the people on Anderson Hill got together, and now we have a lot of signaled crosswalks. Okay. I have talked with the old police administration many times about traffic calming measurements that could be done on Anderson Hill, not the least of which is rumble strips. And before somebody complains about that sound, you could put it out in front of my house, and I'm not going to complain. That being said, with going back to school with children, and the fact that that corner of Seney and Anderson Hill, you have to hang so far out into the road to even see what's coming down the hill. It seems to me that there needs to be some kind of a study done and something done to calm traffic there. My other point is at the intersection of Mine Mount and Anderson Hill, and I can't tell you north, south, east, west. Coming up from town, there is a crosswalk that crosses across Anderson Hill. On the cemetery side, there is a crosswalk that crosses. On the other side of Mine Mount, there is, and I think that's help me out, I forget what.
Highview.
There's a crosswalk there, but there is no crosswalk. There should either be a box crosswalk at that intersection or an X crosswalk at that intersection. Because when children come from after school, a lot of times they come down my side of Anderson Hill, and that's where they cross. There is a crossing guard there, but I also saw right before school ended, 2 children who stepped out into the road and were almost hit by a pedestrian. Now, children don't usually pay attention to what's going on. The driver sort of did, but I'm glad those kids didn't get hit. If there was an X crosswalk there or a box crosswalk there, I think that would be a good thing. Thank you so much for listening.
Pat, can
Thanks,
you
Pat.
send me those locations and I'll bring it up with public safety?
I'll be very happy to. Thank you very much.
I see Kathy Peachy joined us. Kathy, did you want to speak?
Hi, Kathy Peachy, 70 Chilton Street. Thanks, Pat. I remember as a kid, I was walking down Anderson Hill and one of my friends was hit by not by a pedestrian, but by a vehicle. And so it's nice that things might be slowed down along that strip. I appreciate your concern. I also just wanted to say that I was grateful for the environmentally sensitive and active citizens regarding that 267 Minebrook Park. I have to say, I didn't know about it, so I appreciate that they were on top of it. I also think I know from one of the previous meetings that the council's been working on the redevelopment and downtown and all that for, I think it was more than 3 years. And so I appreciate the time and the diligence they've put into that. I also appreciate, though, the informed and proactive citizens that are here with us tonight and everything that they're providing us. To me, it feels like they're supporting you on the council with their information, you know, supporting information with historic buildings and existing zoning and sharing their perspectives. So I think it's important to, even though we're going forward and we know we are, and that's a good thing, but it's okay to just listen to everyone and think about how we go forward, even though, you know, 3 years thinking about it in the past versus decades going forward, I think we really do want to be mindful. So I just appreciate all of the input, and I've come to know indirectly the council members by attending so many meetings, and I really believe that they have the best interest of everyone at heart. So that's what I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathy. Rosalie? Okay, last one.
Thank you, Rosalie Valentine, 19 Pheasant Hill. I just want to say one more time, and I'm sorry to belabor the point, but I'm so concerned about this, is I just beg you all not tonight to not grant Advanced Reality the exclusive designation as redeveloper of the Palmer property. Please. Thank you so much. Good night.
Thanks, Rosalie. All right, I am going to close the public hearing. And now, Matt, would you like to just give us an update? Maybe for the public, explain what the agreement is, and then for the council, what just the highlights?
Certainly, yeah. So good evening, Mayor and council members. Matt Jessup from McManaman, Scotland and Bauman. With me tonight in one of these boxes is my law partner, Tiana Cafoni, who I know you also all know. So Mayor, as you asked, the redevelopment agreement, which is the agreement before you for consideration tonight, governs the terms of the proposed project and really the partnership between the borough and AR at Bernardsville LLC, which is the advanced realty entity that is created for purposes of this project. And that's very common for these projects. The redevelopment agreement does designate AR as the redeveloper of the property. It does give them the right to build and construct a project in accordance with the terms of the redevelopment plan, which of course is the zoning for the property, the height, the density, the bulk, the setbacks, things that have come up earlier on this meeting and were already adopted by ordinance. So they get to build in accordance with that redevelopment plan and in accordance with the terms of the redevelopment agreement. The agreement itself does several things. It defines the project. This is a 4-story project with a maximum of 68 residential units, approximately 12 one-bedrooms, 47 two-bedrooms, 9 3-bedroom units, 8,000 square feet of commercial space, 8,000 square feet of landscaped frontage, which includes public sidewalks that'll be borough-owned, as public sidewalks are, and the private spaces to be privately owned and landscaped by AR. It includes a concept plan, which is substantially similar, if not exactly, to the one you saw back earlier this month. The redevelopment agreement dictates a host of terms. The redeveloper will pay customary water and sewer connection fees. They'll construct in accordance with a project schedule that includes submitting a site plan application within 4 months of execution of this redevelopment agreement, right, to kickstart that process. They will complete the project at the latter of June 2027 or 30 months after they commence their vertical construction, right, when the first footings and foundations go into the ground. The redevelopment agreement governs the process for the issuance of a certificate of completion, which comes at the end of the entire project being completed and evidences that the project is done, that the area is no longer an area in need of redevelopment, and releases the redeveloper and the borough from their obligations under the redevelopment agreement. The redevelopment agreement requires the redeveloper to contribute $35,000 for neighborhood improvements to be jointly approved. Those need to be spent basically within 2 years, or they go back to the redeveloper. So one of our focuses obviously will make sure that we put that money to good use quickly. The agreement requires the redeveloper to fund an escrow to cover the borough's share of its professionals' costs, including $25,000 of costs incurred prior to execution of the redevelopment agreement. It importantly requires the redeveloper to make an affordable housing payment of $1 million, all of which is due prior to the first certificate of occupancy. So that's a one sum payment to the borough before the project is complete and residents are starting to move in. And it also importantly acknowledges that the redeveloper may submit an application for a pilot. The borough and the redeveloper have 90 days from execution of the redevelopment agreement to negotiate, approve, and sign a financial agreement, which memorializes the terms of that pilot. Otherwise, either party can terminate the redevelopment agreement. So, which makes sense for both sides, right? If the redeveloper doesn't have the financial deal that it needs to make the project work, it doesn't want to go forward, which we understand. And of course, if the borough is not getting the economic deal that it believes it deserves, then we don't want the project going forward. That process is underway and will be before you appropriately in the coming meetings. But it's an important, I want to pause, even though it's not the redevelopment agreement, it's really the financial agreement, since it came up earlier, to talk just a little bit about that process, because this goes to the financial health of the project, the return to the redeveloper, and the new revenue and the returns to the borough. That's all being determined and set as part of the financial agreement process that will take place once the redevelopment agreement is executed. And again, if either party isn't happy, they get to walk away. So we will know what advances returns are because they're being validated by a third party independent financial advisor hired for the benefit of the borough. We'll know what their costs are. We'll know what their equity and debt numbers look like. We'll know what their returns are, and we'll equally importantly know what our revenue expectations are. Finally, the redevelopment agreement has a host of what I'd call very standard provisions. The redeveloper will indemnify the borough, of course, if for any liability in connection with the project. There is a restriction on transfers of the project prior to the project completion. So they can't sign this redevelopment agreement and turn around the next day and flip this to someone else. As I started this discussion, this agreement memorializes a partnership. And so we want to partner with Advance, and we want to see Advance, not somebody else, construct and build this project in accordance with the plan, in accordance with all of the zoning that the borough has already determined for this property. That, Mayor, is a summary of the provisions of the redevelopment agreement. As you and others have mentioned, the negotiation with respect to the redevelopment agreement has gone on for quite a while and is now before you by resolution for your consideration.
Thank you, Matt. Did anyone on the council have any questions for Matt?
I do, Mayor. Hi, Matt. Can I ask a few questions?
Yeah, of course, Councilman.
Yeah. So I have three. One is maybe more for discussion, but thank you for that great overview. I actually think you really answered a lot of the questions that the public had, and I appreciate the overview and the reminder of a number of aspects for us. The first question I had was around the affordable housing provision. It says the timings at issue of certificate of occupancy when we receive that. I was just wondering why would certificate of occupancy make sense versus a payment that might be earlier to the borough, considering you may not be issuing the CO until 2026, 2027. Is that something you could speak to?
Sure, Councilman. So the challenge for any obviously meaningful project cost, and this is one, is for the developer to advance those costs without revenue, right, coming on the back end to support. So when we look at, and when your third party independent financial advisor looks at the project pro forma, all of the costs, knowing the costs that have to go in early, design, engineering, architecture, permitting, right, getting all the governmental approvals, and then commencing construction. We want this project to be a success too, right? So we're sensitive to our needs and trying to balance it with their needs. So the thought with requiring it prior to the first certificate of occupancy, we believe, is a healthy hammer effectively for two reasons. One, it does put a meaningful payment closer to the time when the developer will start receiving some revenue, right? Because they won't receive any revenue from this project, not a dime, until they get a certificate of occupancy and they can move residents in, right? Get them into the units and have them start paying rent. And that doesn't happen overnight for all of the units, by the way, right? That takes months and months to happen. At the same time, it's an important payment to us. So we don't want the developer to be able to move forward and start collecting that revenue until they've made that payment to us. They will want to get revenue moving as quickly as possible. So they will be incentivized to move as quickly as possible, and they will need to pay us before they can collect $1 of revenue. But at the same time, they can start shortly thereafter. So it's quite frankly a balancing point of when is the right time.
Okay, that makes sense. Thank you. The second thing, I think you answered it though. I had a question around the public improvements provision, the 35,000, that it wasn't specified, but it sounds like, and you can just affirm it, that it will be specified per agreement later on between the borough and the developer in the project plan. Is that correct?
Correct, Councilman. The redevelopment agreement basically says that the parties will come together and agree on the use of that money for improvements basically related to the site, but certainly not necessarily on the site, right? On site are the responsibility of the developer. Off site, you will be able to consult with them and come to an agreement on where and how you want that money spent. I would again just advise that there is a timetable there, so we're going to want to do that sooner than later.
Yeah. Okay. And then my final one, I'm sorry, Jack.
Can I ask a secondary question to that? What if the developer doesn't come to an agreement with us on those funds? What if they just say, no, we don't want to do it for that, or any of the other suggestions?
Yeah, so both parties are obligated to act reasonably. I would say if you're saying no to everything, blanket, you're not acting reasonably, and we'd tell them that they're breaching their redevelopment agreement and they're in default.
Okay. Thanks.
I don't expect that.
I don't either. I just was asking the question.
Yeah, it's a great question. And I think it's important, just order of magnitude, right? Nickels turned to dollars very quickly. 35,000 is not an insignificant number, but in the grand scheme of the project cost, right, it's not a number that I think they're going to want to blow something up over, quite frankly.
The final thing is just a comment, but it may be one thing we had discussed before, and this is before you were the redeveloper attorney, Matt, is inside of this agreement, putting a provision that the developer would have to have a relocation plan for businesses located at the property. I know some of the businesses have already made decisions about their future. Some of them I've talked to about it, but that was a provision that I think council was interested in having. I welcome comments from my other members of council, but I wondered if that was a provision we could potentially put in Article 2 or Article 3. I don't think that would materially alter it. And I think that it's something that the developer was also interested in doing, even if it's to submit to us at a later time, their plan for, ensuring either relocation or sort of some type of continuity services for the businesses that are going to be affected on the location right now.
So there is a provision in the redevelopment agreement currently that talks about neighborhood issues and neighborhood impacts. It does acknowledge that the project is going to have impact to the neighborhood in the vicinity of the redevelopment project, and that there will be sort of temporary inconveniences. So they are obligated to take reasonable steps to minimize those material negative impacts, including general business operations of the existing retail and commercial spaces. Okay. And so the borough and the redeveloper do agree in the redevelopment agreement to address the reasonable concerns of the surrounding neighborhoods, so that the citizens, the residents, and the businesses, the project will be completed, with as little inconvenience as possible. So there is a process and a provision for the parties to come together and figure out how to address that issue.
If a business came to council and was not satisfied that their needs are being met inside of that provision, what recourse would council have to help them rectify it vis-a-vis the developer?
So you would start by exercising your right under this provision to meet with the redeveloper and to, again, as long as it's a reasonable accommodation that we're talking about, to sit down with the redeveloper and try and map out a plan that addresses that concern. We can always fight down the road about what reasonable means if the parties can't see eye to eye. That's at the end of the day what would likely happen. But you would first go to the redeveloper. They'd be obligated to sit with you. They'd be obligated in good faith to try and reasonably accommodate whatever that circumstance is.
Can you just highlight that, Matt? Do you know what the number is on that? I just want to read it.
Sure, it's section 14.1.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. How was that $1 million calculated for the affordable housing when 10 units at a going rate of $177,000 totals $1,777,000? I would like to know how that additional $770,000 will be made up to the borough.
So I think I can answer half of that question, but I'm not sure I can speak to the policy issues of this other half of that question. The affordable housing payment was the result of the negotiation between the borough and the redeveloper in light of the total project cost. The redeveloper maintained, and to date, your financial advisor has confirmed that the project could not afford a $1.77 million payment. The project would not be moving forward. Quite frankly, it's simple. So the task and the goal in order to effectuate the redevelopment plan and to put the property to the use intended by the redevelopment plan was to negotiate to a payment and a time and term for that payment that was acceptable to both parties, that the borough knows is an amount that they can pay without financially risking the viability of the project. So that's how that we got to that $1 million number. What the borough does in terms of the additional money that it couldn't have gotten out of this project and what it might be needed for in the future, I can't speak to that at this point. But that's how it came.
Yeah, man, I can follow up because I think we discussed, so that's why we hired a financial planner. That's why we had this investigation done to see what the project could afford. And those items are now back on the table when we discussed the pilot, was at least the decision we made a few weeks ago.
Yeah, I believe we talked about recovering that through the pilot.
Yep.
Well, okay, so yes, I understand.
Yeah.
Thank you. So agreed that the pilot analysis is all encompassing, right? What we're going to do and what we are doing is looking at all of the project costs, including construction costs, all of the revenue assumptions, and all of the operating expense assumptions. That at this point, that the first one, the project cost will include the $1 million in the affordable housing fee. From there, we are determining through your municipal advisor what the appropriate level of pilot is for the project. That pilot will be a function of what the project costs are, and we now know what the locked project costs are. So that's correct.
I have another question. If Advance can't afford to pay the 1.77 million, then why can't they put the 10 units within the Palmer development?
So it's the same problem, right? Because each affordable housing unit comes at a loss, right? That's what makes the affordable housing piece such a challenge, right? So you're basically, in lieu of making the payment, you're asking them to spend the same money, but put it into the project. They wouldn't be able to afford it either way.
And respectfully, I mean, Diane, you're asking our attorney policy questions. I mean, these are policy things that we've been discussing. I think the appropriate direction for policy questions is the rest of council.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I was going to ask something similar about that COA payment, but I think, and I just want to make sure I understand exactly what I heard. because my question was going to be, why isn't the COA costs and payments included in the financial agreement that will be forthcoming? And I think what I just understood based on your responses is from Matt, is that if we don't put the COA payment into the agreement that's on for resolution this evening, that we won't have the complete project final costs in order to do a proper financial agreement.
So
Is that correct?
So yes, the payment is included in the financial agreement math, right? Importantly. And yes, if we don't have, if the project cost numbers are not, locked in, you're trying to decide a variable with another moving variable is the best way to say it, right? So now with all of the expense variables locked in, it's very easy to now say, what does the math say the appropriate return to the developer should be, but not an egregious return? And what does that mean in terms of revenue for the borough? If we had cost variables that were still fluctuating, an increase here is a decrease here, a decrease, right? It just becomes circular. So I think one of the nice things about locking in the affordable housing payment now is that all of those variables are locked and it's all in the math on the financial agreement, which is forthcoming.
Okay, great. And I just want to thank you and Tiana. Sorry, I just really want to thank you and Tiana for jumping in so quickly and really making sure that the borough was fully covered on this agreement. Thank you very much for all your work in a short amount of time.
So the pilot is part of the financial agreement, which we don't have yet. Wouldn't it make more sense to be doing this whole thing at once, so we know exactly where the money to the borough is coming from, and exactly where that $770,000 to make sure that it's in there?
So that's why the redevelopment agreement contains the provision that it does, allowing either party to terminate. Because to your point, if we determine that the math doesn't make sense to the borough, we can turn around and terminate the redevelopment agreement without any liability or cost to the borough and walk away from the project.
Is it an often practice that we developers can't afford to do the COA obligation?
Every project is unique. We've seen projects with them in, we've seen projects with them out, we've seen affordable housing payments, we've seen standalone projects built elsewhere. There's no common.
And maybe to that point, we're also limiting the number of units they have. If we went back to them and said we wanted to get the full number of units for them to cover the affordable housing component, we might need to raise the number of units in the development to cover that cost. So I mean, we kind of put a limit on what they can do from a revenue basis.
If they can't afford it now, the only way to make them be able to afford it is to give them more units where they can, drive up revenue, right? I mean, their revenue is from a limited source.
Perhaps if they can't afford it, they shouldn't be doing the job.
Okay, any other questions from the council?
Yeah, just one more quick one, Matt. I just want to make sure there wasn't a mistake in here. In Article 8, Section E, about 2/3 of the way, it says, the borough should not amend or modify the redevelopment plan without consent of the redeveloper and the borough. Is that supposed to be the plan or this agreement? Like, in other words, the redevelopment plan is the underlying zoning. And will this provision then lock us into not being able to therefore modify any underlying zoning without a renegotiation?
Yes, and that's intentional and important, because what the developer wants to make sure of is that we're not sitting there telling them, we want you to build a 64-unit residential over retail project, which we have zoned for you, you have designed, you have engineered, et cetera. We've contracted with you to do that. But tomorrow we're going to turn around and zone it for a grocery store or an auto dealership or something else, and completely eliminate your ability to build what we contracted with you to build. So it's important that the developer knows, as they're about to spend, tens and tens of millions of dollars, that we're not going to change the rules of the game on them halfway through. That way, that said, if we come to them or they come to us and say, we'd like to, modify the plan to move a setback farther back or to do something like that because engineering has determined, et cetera, et cetera. You may decide to say yes, you may decide to say no. It may be your request going to them and saying, we'd like you to add a little more space for trees, which requires this or that. They can say yes, they can say no, but that's intentional right now because we can't tell them what we want them to go build and then pull it out from underneath them.
It makes sense. Thank you. And one more time, what was the neighborhood impact provision? You said what article? I'm sorry, I just want to read that one more time.
It was 13.1.
I think it only goes up to 9, right?
12.1. It was, where was it? Hang on. 13.
I thought you said 12.
I thought you said 14.01, but I thought.
Oh.
Yes, it was 14.1.
14.1. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Yeah. And actually, I think at this point, almost all the tenants are gone. I know the art studio is closing.
Yeah, there's
next
2
month.
more, I think, that aren't. But just wanted to make sure that we had a recourse. That's someone brings something to us. It's something we talked about last year too.
Yeah.
That we have a way to help the local business navigate the impact.
Absolutely. Yeah. Thanks for bringing that up, Al. Any other council questions?
No, just Anthony, I've transitioned home from work and I'm going to join via my computer. So if you can let me in, please.
Okay, we'll do.
Are we doing these separate? Or are we doing
Yes,
all the?
let's take the first one off and do it separately. 23-162. Actually, we might want to do a couple of them separately.
Yeah, we should do 63 separate, I think, too.
Yes.
We just want to
yeah.
make a comment on that separately.
Yeah. So let's just let me wait for Chad to get back in. Somebody else coming in. Chad went out, right?
Yes, I don't see him anymore. So yes, I believe he did.
Ah, here he comes. Okay. Let's let him get back in.
And I'll make him a co-host.
Okay, so would someone like to move resolution 23-162?
I move to adopt resolution 23-162.
I'll second. I'd like to make some comments. I don't know if you want to do that before or after the vote.
Do you want to do it as you vote?
Sure.
How about that, if you'd like? This is a roll call.
Yes.
Mr. Ambelang,
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield,
I do not believe this project, as it is currently designed, is in the best interest of the borough and the future of the borough. And I therefore cannot support moving it forward. I vote no.
Ms. McCready,
Yes, I think with the financial agreement that's coming in future and what we will, have the opportunity to terminate the contract if it is not in the best interest of the borough, that we will have that opportunity at that point. So I vote yes.
Mr. McQueen,
we've been discussing this for well over a year. The negotiation on this has gone on a really long time. And in any good negotiation, you get to a point where it's painful for both parties. I think we're at that point of pain for both parties. I think we've done the due diligence that due diligence requires. We've hired and fired attorneys. We've done everything we could possibly do to get this right. I've thought for a long time this would help the borough. I think we've gotten more. I'm an emphatic yes.
Mr. Ribeiro.
I'm a yes, and I just want to make some comments on it. Likewise, well, first of all, I love Kathy Peachy's comments. I really am grateful for all the participation on this at the August 10th meeting. I know everybody has the intention of doing what's best for the future of our community and what they believe, really makes Bernardsville special. And I am very grateful, even if you've disagreed with it, that you've brought your perspective. Likewise, we started talking about this when I joined council in January 2022. It's been well over a year and a half. We've been talking about this. I totally get if people don't like it because of traffic impact or questions around parking, or they just don't like the design, or they don't agree with the 2019 master plan that allows projects like this. But I don't feel that personally that it's been rushed, because we have been talking about it for some time. And this is actually the 9th public meeting that we've had some type of action regarding the Palmer project on over the course. And it doesn't even include the comments that we've had over it. And 2 of those meetings had over 100 residents attending, including 1 solely dedicated. And we wouldn't have even had that solely dedicated meeting, nor this long process, if we didn't adopt it as a area of redevelopment earlier. I like the benefits that we're getting as a borough to it. To me, the fact that we're going to be significantly increasing the revenue that this property pays to the borough is a big provision for me. Right now, like I've said previously, the borough only takes 6 to 7% of its revenue from commercial properties, and 93%, 94% on the backs of taxpayers, and that needs to change. And this is a good step in the right direction. Not to mention the first floor commercial, the changing of the traffic pattern away from the circle, the frontage and the open space, the larger sidewalks that we're getting, and the fact that we've had public input. So likewise, like others have said, I'm interested to see the financials, making sure that they work. Obviously, that's key to this. And for my first point, one of my keys, and that's why I'm excited for the way that this property is heading. But there's still a lot of other steps, not only the financial agreement, but the steps through the planning board too, that has to happen before, before this project really sees the light of day. So, like I said, I'm a yes, and looking forward to the next steps.
Ms. Zamara?
I apologize for having no camera, but I'm in transit from dropping a student off at college. But like Al said, and I completely agree, all the due diligence that we've done proves that this is not only a fiscally responsible project, but it's also very environmentally responsible. As some describe it to be a massive building, I disagree with that. And I agree with the fact that this is an investment in our community. We're talking about 8,000 square feet of space where people can feel safe walking through downtown. We're talking about $35,000 investment in potential traffic calming efforts, which we desperately need. We're talking about $1 million investment in affordable housing. And if anyone is aware of the way that things are going, not only in Bernardsville, but throughout New Jersey and throughout the country, housing is desperately needed for families, for people. So to me, it's an investment in families, 68 families to be exact, who are going to be able to become part of our community, part of our downtown livelihood, and part of what makes our community great. So to me, this is a no-brainer. We worked very hard on this. And not only do we want to achieve success, we're committed to achieving success. And to me, it's a definite yes.
Well said, Christine.
Thank you. All right, so the resolution is passed. Moving on to 23-163. Authorizing the mayor to sign a letter of intent for lease of units at 150 Morristown Road. Someone like to move it?
I'll move it.
23-163.
I'll second.
Okay. Got it. All right. Any discussion?
I think it'd be helpful, Mayor, if maybe Nancy walks through, if she's available, just how this fits in. And one thing I guess I'll say before she does, since it's discussion, is one thing I'd like to see is, and I talked with Nancy about this, and Mayor, I've mentioned it to you, a long-term plan for our facilities. I think it's wise that we're thinking about what our current space needs. I mean, we've talked about the impact on the Burnsville Police Department and their needs. of trying to become more resident and customer centric in a way. And I think this will help that, which Nancy can walk through. But I also think that we need to think about all the properties the borough owns, the borough hall we're in now. If we're, the 150 Morristown Road, properties that we own in town, and maybe come up with a 10-year plan on what we feel like our space needs are going to be given the plans that we're putting in place. And so I know that's a longer term project, but something that I'd like to see overall.
Yeah, thank you, Al. I think, what we discovered in this process, I didn't realize it, but the borough offices used to be in the Essex building. I think until 1959 when we moved into the mill. And one of I think the key things for making this decision is we have a lot of new residents. People get very confused. They come to one building and say, no, you have to go to the downstairs in the library. That's not always easy to find, the offices downstairs. And if you ever had to come into Borough Hall in a wheelchair, it is so not accessible. Yes, we have an elevator. It's hardly a good conveyance. I've been in it when I had a foot surgery and had my little scooter. It's slow, it's dark, this new place is very accessible for parking, for walking, for anybody. The bathrooms are accessible, which they are not in Borough Hall. So, and the other piece is that the police are looking to get state accreditation. Part of that is looking at our facilities. And if you've been in the police station, and having a female officer now, there just isn't enough space for them to really operate efficiently. So that's my take. Nancy, you can give yours.
Mayor, I think you said most of it.
Oh, sorry.
That's all right. I mean, I think one of the things that everybody left out, which probably doesn't mean like a lot for most residents anyway, but I think to have, it's like we're two different town governments right now, employees with the people in the library and then, us at Borough Hall. And so to me, to have everybody in one place, it makes being able to operate the town a lot easier, more efficient, and it makes a more, I think, cohesive workforce. But I think the primary objective is to be able to have, a place of convenience for the public. I've only worked in town for 4 months, but I can't count the number of times people came in and asked if they can get, sign their kid up for camp or, get a pool membership and, or, a permit. And I said, no, you got to go to the other side of town, the other building. And something we haven't talked about is that this will enable us to rent out the bottom areas of the library that are currently occupied by our employees so that we can, bring in more revenue for the municipality. And you also said about the police department, that is true. If they're trying to become accredited, they can, they need more room in order to be able to adequately do all the things they need to do. And so I just think that this is a positive for the residents, a positive for the employees. And I just think overall, it's a good move.
Thank you.
Can I make a comment?
Sure.
So I'm a big believer in fiscal discipline in the government, and this is going to add to our budgetary burden, but completely makes sense to me. When I look at what both you and Nancy said, this is the right plan for the town. It's the right plan for the residents. And it also gives Bernardsville the opportunity to grow, which I think is critically important. So, I'm very supportive of this.
Yeah. I think one of the other key points is our main role is customer service. That's what we're here for. We're here to serve the residents' needs. And if we can make that easier and more convenient, plus having everyone in one building almost guarantees that there's always coverage. Sometimes one of the smaller offices will be empty or somebody's out sick, somebody, goes to lunch. This way you can always see a friendly face. There'll be a proper lobby and access to each department as soon as you walk in. So I think that's just really enhancing our job of customer service.
Not to mention Jay and I will be able to walk to committee meetings.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
No, actually, no, the committee meetings will still be.
Oh,
So
yeah.
they're on
Borough
Zoom.
Hall.
To meet with you then, Nancy.
And we will have, yes, our council meetings will continue to be at Borough Hall, mainly because that's the biggest room we have. So, yeah. All right. We have to do a roll call. Anthony?
Ms. Zamara,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Ms. Greenfield,
Yes.
Mr. Ambeline.
Yes.
All right, the next, 164 to 167 are basically personnel issues, which we did discuss in the Personnel Committee, and I think Nancy may have gotten most of you up to date on how these were all working. Does anybody want to, well, let's move them first. Let's move 164 to 167.
Okay.
Somebody?
I'll move resolutions 23-163 through 23-167.
Or 164. Yeah.
Oh, sorry, 160, yes, you're right, sorry, 164 through 167.
I'll second.
All right, any discussion? I think we're good on these. Okay, so roll call.
Mr. Ambeline.
You're muted.
You're muted.
Sorry. Yes.
Ms. Greenfield,
Yes.
Ms. McCready,
Yes.
Mr. McQueen,
Yes.
Mr. Romero,
Yes.
Ms. Zamara.
Yes.
All right, moving on to items of discussion, business, cyclocross. I know we've all heard from the Environmental Commission people, residents.
I have a statement I'd like to read regarding
Okay,
this.
sorry, and I just have a question. Can somebody fill me in on what the heck happened? Like, and what are
I think
the real
the
facts?
I think
Because there's a lot of
problem-
conjecture.
Yes. The problem is, I think, with our recreation director was on paternity leave. And normally he would have been on top of this. He usually oversees everything they do there. So I think that may have been part of the problem. And some of the volunteers were new and didn't know our rules about using pesticides or herbicides. So that was another part of the problem. I think there was I went and looked at it and it's way too much clearing. I agree. And I think, council, it's up to you if you want to continue the program, or after which let them do their program and then make them either replace all the plants that they've taken out and put it back to the way it was at their own expense. Thoughts, comments?
Yes.
Go ahead.
I don't have a problem with cyclocross or any other group using the borough parks and trails. I have a problem with the destruction of property. And Gina, I would be happy to take you over there and show you exactly what it is that they did and what happened. I've been over there like several times since first discovered this. As Kerry had stated earlier, there are trail rules and regulations which were approved by council, added to the existing recreation ordinance, and they are posted on the borough website. The area is an environmentally sensitive area. My main concern about all the problem that they did here, it's a severe slope area, and this group first sprayed the herbicide, which is not permitted in the borough. Then they stripped the area of vegetation as well as the top layer of soil, which is also not permitted. In addition, the debris was tossed down the slope where the stream is, which can lead to contamination and must be
Diane, we've already heard all that.
All right. And I'm just saying that I think that we need to consult people who are professionals in the area to find out exactly how to go about fixing it. Moving forward.
Right, let's hear the solution.
Can I finish? Moving forward, I think there needs to be better communication all around, and I would suggest that Recreation and Trails work with DPW to come up with a written list of do's and don'ts to ensure that everyone is on the same page so that all the borough facilities can be properly protected. Any work that's done in this area should be under the approved by the borough and after the consultation with an environmental engineer. And there should always be a plan in place that should be closely supervised by REC and DPW. As far as for 2023 and the cycle cross group goes, as long as all the insurance paperwork has been received, I think that the group should be permitted to use the park and trail areas. However, they must adhere to the borough trail rules and use only the existing entrance at the left side of the trail, not the two that the destruction happened on. And they cannot do anything to permanently alter the area. I also think that Recreation and Trails should work to immediately provide them with any additional information that they want them to know to help them better be able to navigate that. That being said, the issue of who is going to pay for the cleanup and the restoration of the damaged areas does still need to be addressed, and I don't believe that the taxpayers should be putting in for this. I don't have a problem.
Did anybody take pictures of?
Yes, we have
They're
lots of
included in the packet.
Oh, I didn't see them. Hang on, I'll find them.
They're at the end.
So Diane, what when we say that the taxpayer shouldn't pay for it, I certainly can agree with that. What solutions are we looking for with that then? Are we just?
I think Kerry had some suggestions, and we should explore other professionals who know about this, how to fix it. I mean, I don't know about it. I don't know what you should put there. I'd have to defer to someone who is a professional in that area to find out what we should do.
Actually, I believe Christy volunteered.
Yes.
Yeah. So are we looking just for an agreement that, hey, we need to fix what occurred there as a town, both from a rec perspective, from a cyclocross perspective, from a trails committee EC perspective?
I think the ball got dropped somewhere along the line, and I think tighter controls between REC and the Trails Committee and DPW when dealing with outside groups using borough property, I'm sure that would be beneficial. And but it also, any group that is using a borough property has to be aware of the rules and regulations that are already in place, and respectful of that. And any damage that they do, they have to fix.
So just some questions, some clarifying questions. I'm looking at the pictures in the back of the packet here. So did they cut these new trails? Did they widen them? Did they herbicide them?
Yes.
All of the above.
Well,
Yes.
two of them, there's two new ones coming from the parking area. I don't know if you can see those. There's two new openings.
So that's the big wide 10-foot wide path.
No.
Chad, it's hard to tell from the pictures unless you know the area well. It's very difficult for you. There's a two or more were started, but two were definitely made from the parking lot area. But the ones that I am most concerned about are the ones that are on the big slope that lead down to in the ravine where the trail actually is.
Yeah, there's kind of a really steep drop off. Which, it's up to council if you want it. Are we okay with still letting cyclocross do their season and then asking them to repair whatever they've done?
They can't, I'm fine with them as long as they are not using anything that's cut right now. It's got to be fenced off, and it's got to be not used, because if they use it, it will make the whole situation much worse. They can use the original entrance for the cyclocross, and they could set up, how they ever did before. And they can't mark the trees with permanent spray paint, because then it's there forever and it interferes with all the other trails that are going on in the area. They can use spray paint that is water soluble.
Or some kind of temporary marker.
Yeah.
When is Bob Markowitz back from paternity leave?
2 weeks, I believe.
Bob was out there. I was out there with Bob. He knows all about it. He was out there with us.
He's been in and out. He was in today. I met with him. I believe he's on the call.
Oh,
On
is
the
Bob
Zoom.
here? Look at you, Bob. I actually, I'm happy but disappointed. Did Bob have a recommendation? See, the hard thing, from my perspective, there's two things. Number one, I'm not involved in the daily life of what is agreed to and what's not agreed to with Bob and the rec department for this property, for this purpose. So I understand that, look, they did some bad things. I'd like to know the magnitude of those bad things. I don't want them to do bad things anymore, but I'm not sure that there needs to be any more remedy other than, look, don't do this shit.
Well, someone has to pay to repair it, Chad. That's what the issue is.
I mean, it's woods regrows.
No, we're not talking about woods regrow. We're talking about the erosion of and stormwater runoff in an environmentally sensitive area. We have to plant something there that has a strong root system to keep the embankment up. It's way beyond, I did a bad thing, slap on the wrist.
Yeah, I kind of hear what you're saying, Chad. We don't get involved in the day-to-day who's using the fields when kind of thing, that really falls under the purview of recreation. I mean, we don't know who's using the turf field on for what programs necessarily. I think that, probably, why don't we ask Bob to give us a solution? Not tonight.
Yeah, and I'd like his assessment too.
I'd like Bob's assessment, and then I'd like, maybe Bob could meet with Johanna or someone from the Environmental Commission and figure out a plan. Because I don't think it's up to us here to kind of hash that all out.
But we agree. So I think one of the questions in there was that cyclocross needed the okay soon, right? So we're basically saying everyone's okay with cyclocross continuing for the season, which I agree with. I think it's been, a real boon to the community. I think we all want to make Bernardsville a, biking and hiking mecca as much as we can. And it's been great to attract events like that. At the same time, we're all concerned about the environmental impact. We don't know exactly from a cost perspective what the environmental impact and what could be done. So we're going to give cyclocross the okay. At the same time, ask Bob to assess it, come back with recommendations for us on how, and then I think hopefully from this, we can get a win-win where we can keep the actual event going, but doing it in a very environmentally conscious way, ensuring that there's not impact and repairing the damage too.
Yeah, I mean, I would say if they continue, maybe to have Bob under Bob's supervision.
Yeah.
Right, with the proper oversight and signage, et cetera.
Yeah, I think that's fair.
But right now, the areas that were totally damaged have to be cordoned off.
But that's what we're saying. That's up to Bob.
Yeah, let's let Bob and
Let's let
Bob work with
recreation.
Are we saying we're gonna let them continue?
Under the supervision, I mean, we're giving it back to recreation. It's their responsibility as to how fields get used and who's using them. And I think if Bob goes out there with them and, they reline their whatever they have to do to not make this worse, I think we're okay with letting them do it, but it can't be any worse than it is now, which it'll happen if they use certain of those paths.
So we're not gonna let them use it.
No, it's up to Bob. We're gonna let Bob make that decision.
So let's define.
Yeah, I'm not
it.
really comfortable with that. Then I'd rather say we'll wait to hear from Bob before we decide.
Well, so Christine, let's define what you're saying. Are you talking about it being the old pass or it being the new pass?
It being any use of that property by cyclocross.
Yeah, I think part of the problem with any use by cyclocross until Bob can come in is that they're gonna lose the season. So if we turn this over and say we're gonna wait till mid-September to make a decision, what's gonna end up happening is that it's gonna start getting dark earlier, right? So these aren't like fields that are under lights. So if they want to be able to do cyclocross this year, and we say we're going to wait till Bob comes back and we're going to go through this, then we're effectively telling them that they can't do it this year. So I understand to Al's point. I think I think there's I'll say this because I don't want to speak for Al. I think there's a compromise here. I think that's why we have an administration. I think we let Bob and the cyclocross and the trails committee and the environmental commission meet together to come up with a solution that works for all. Clearly, this wasn't the right way to do it, but I don't think it's the right thing to cancel their season.
I think we can give them approval under the condition that they adhere to the trail rules and only use the existing entrances, not the new ones that they cut in and where all the destruction is. I'm fine with that.
Let's let the administration.
If we make them, yeah, I know, but to Jay's point, to make them wait is going to ruin half their season. I'm, trying to, do a compromise that will allow them to continue on with their season, and still protect the area.
Well, that's why we're saying the sooner they all meet together and work it out, the sooner they can get their season going.
So let me summarize where I think Diane is has got the salient points here. So they can use it, yes. They cannot use the new trails in the destructed areas. Those need to be sectioned off. And then the third point is there needs to be a recreation coordinated discussion about if and what remedy is necessary.
Correct.
Yeah, and what they use this time, how they use it.
I would put that in the form of a motion so it's clear, and I would also make it clear it's just for this season. It doesn't extend to future years.
I think it should have to be approved every season by resolution.
Exactly, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But for tonight, I would suggest a motion encompassing those points raised by Chad.
Which were raised by me.
Chad, go ahead.
No, I'll let Diane do it. I was just restating her point. So
I know, Chad. Thank you.
I think we should add something in there that talks about what the penalty is if they do this again.
Well, if they do, they'd be violating the section of the code cited by Kerry earlier. So there is recourse in that regard.
If they do, then that goes, they have to come up for resolution next year, they'll be banned.
That's it.
Yeah, then are we saying that what they, that we accept what they did already? Are we like?
No, they can't use what they did.
No, we just said, they can't use what they did.
And can they be punished for what they did? Is that what it comes down to?
No, we're not waiving any remedies the borough may have either.
No, right now we're just talking about whether they can start their season. And we're
Exactly.
saying, yes, they can start their season, but they're not to use any of the new paths that will get worse if they use them. And they need to have this coordinated meeting that rec will coordinate. Did I miss something? And they have to follow whatever the current rules are for use of public spaces.
Under Bob's supervision.
Under Bob's supervision. Okay, somebody want to move that?
I will move that. I'm sorry,
Okay.
Christine. Sorry, Christine, repeat that.
And pending the investigation by the environment expert that you think we should get, or Christy McDonald as our.
Well, I don't think we don't need an investigation. We just need some advice on how to fix it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. And again, I think, recreation can coordinate that.
I'll move it. I will move that they can start their season as long as they adhere to the borough's trail rules and only use the existing entrance to the left side of the trail and not do anything to permanently alter the property. They cannot use the two entrances that they just cut in with all the damage.
And no permanent spray paint.
Yeah.
It's under Bob's supervision. It's for this season only.
Yes.
Yes. Okay, so that was moved. Do I have a second?
Yes, I'll second.
Okay. It's a motion, so it's just all in favor?
Okay.
Any no's? Okay, I think we got that done. All right, next is the voting. Political signs. Thank you, Pat, for explaining it so well. Comments?
I'm fine with this.
Yeah, I think what Pat said, it made a lot of sense. I mean, we sort of don't even have election day anymore. We have more election season, right?
know.
Early voting and mail-in voting and everything. So, I think she laid it out nicely that the mail-in voting might be way too early, but pushing it back a little over a week when early voting starts and people can vote at early voting stations makes sense. So I'm good, whatever that period is. I think she said it's like tomorrow.
Now, since this is an ordinance, it means we can't do it for this election year unless the council says
Well,
yes.
I'm not sure, Mayor, because the language, I think, would allow us to do it. Because it says shall not be permitted prior to 60 days of the election. So since there's early voting, I think the council could just decide we're going to peg that at the start of early voting.
Okay, then we don't have to change anything.
I hate the signs.
Why everybody hates the signs, but unless you're the candidate.
I would almost I'd rather make a motion the signs are banned. I mean, seriously, I know we've discussed this before in sign ordinances and various things.
Yeah, everybody hates
the reasons are good reasons. I'm reluctant to say that we put the junk out in the yard for any longer than is necessary.
Although I would say, look,
it's a week.
I'm going to tug on the property owner string, Chad. It's people's property. They get to put their signs out on their property if they want. They've got a 60-day limitation. It's 60 days before the election. I think from that
Did we say when they have to come down?
They're supposed to come down a week after the election.
Yeah.
Within a week?
Within 7 days of such election. So that would be election day itself.
So that being said, can we address the public property differently?
Well, it shouldn't be on
talking about.
We don't allow it on public property.
I know.
Yeah, we just send the DPW out to pull them out. And they
Or
keep them down at
or
Borough
the
Hall.
state comes down 202 and pulls
Yes,
them out.
the state
Except
makes
when
us
parties
wait.
go and put them
I
all
think
out the night
60
before the
days.
election.
Listen, people might get annoyed by him, but it's still your elected officials. People need the ability to be able to hear and understand who it is. It's still free speech. So we've already limited with 60 days. I think that's an appropriate time period. And, I don't know if we necessarily need other limitations set on it. I think people.
We're only talking about a week.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, it's only a week. So we're good with that. All in favor?
Aye.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. I think, is that it? Yeah. We're now up to closed session. Do I have a motion for executive
Are
session?
we coming back out?
No, right? We don't have to come back
No,
out.
I think we do. I think
We do?
I think in the personnel action.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So yes, we may reopen, but it's going to be I wouldn't advise you to stay. Hang on. You can always check back in later. We have
Okay,
a lot
I'll
on
move
the
for
agenda.
executive.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So thank you all who came. We appreciate it. And if you have questions, call us.